So, if you're by chance missing your national anthem here, my sister seems to have written it down for you. So, if you have by chance been missing it, it's on the board. At least we're clean now. You guys remember what the topic was today? Oh, budget. You guys are here for the budget video. Hang on, I'll fix this. There she is. Okay, so before we get started talking about some things, really quickly, I do kind of have a small update for you guys. You guys didn't ask for this. It's not Christmas. It probably is somebody's birthday out there. But I got another whiteboard. So it was $5. It's in immaculate condition. You want to see the back? That's the back of the whiteboard. Okay, so the reason that that's a big deal is because after this video, I am hoping that this video is the last video that I do any kind of discussion on the Kingdom Cup. I do plan on doing probably one more practice battle once I get some TMs and I can kind of finalize my team. I do kind of want to do one more practice battle, but this is it. I need to talk about this video because it's actually kind of an important one, and even some of you guys have been questioning what this video is going to kind of be about. So, let's get on with our subject today, being building a budget team to do well in the Kingdom Cup. Now, this is an extremely tricky one. And as you can see behind me, I do have two different teams on the board. I have Dustport, kind of like a play on dirt poor, and Frugal Savings, which means that you don't want to spend a lot, but you have some to spend. So, two different Stardust costs this month, but generally with these videos, my goal is to get a team, a decently competitive team, under 100,000 Stardust. So, I accomplished that with, you know, Dustport over here. Frugal Savings, not so much, but we'll get into that. So, our first team that I came up with is actually Dustport here, going with a Piloswine, Charizard, Blaziken, Altaria, Lapras, and Bronzong team of 6. Now, this was kind of an interesting choice because these are all really... So, not all of them are like hardcore meta picks. Not all of them are part of the ball meta, but some of these are pretty interesting, and I think with this team you do have a pretty decent situation that you can kind of play around with. So Piloswine being our first choice here, this is actually the first Pokemon that I changed. In the first rendition, it was not Piloswine. So this is our first change. Now, the reason that I changed this is because the original Pokemon that was here was not necessarily budget friendly. It's possible to do it on a budget, but it was not a budget. I won't point out who that Pokemon was, but I feel like I needed to include a team that does not include a certain Pokemon because, not because it's expensive, but simply because of how difficult it is to get them. But I will not name that Pokemon today. So Piloswine is our first choice. I end up going with Powder Snow, and you can kind of do either one here. You can either go for Bulldoze or you can go for Stone Edge. If you feel like you're going to be seeing a lot more flying types or even a lot more ice types in your local cup, I definitely would maybe lean towards Stone Edge. If you feel like Steel is going to be pretty prevalent, if you feel like Steelix and Bronzong and Bastiodon and even Lucario are going to be pretty prevalent, you may want to steer more closer towards Bulldoze, but it's kind of a toss-up. You don't necessarily need both of them, because if you are fearing the flying types, then Altaria can kind of help you with that. Lapras can sort of help with that just based on bulk. Plus you already have Powder Snow here, so it's not like it's too big of a deal. But you don't really have any other outs to the steel typing other than Blaziken, and Charizard can do a little bit of damage to those. Blaziken having counter, of course, can do a lot of damage to those. And Bronzong can kind of, you know, it's kind of up in the air with Bronzong. Moving on to Charizard, so we are actually going to purchase a second move here. Of course, we want to go with Fire Spin, Blast Burn, and we want to be able to purchase that Dragon Claw. So having access to Dragon Claw on Charizard really helps us secure some of the Dragon matches if our Altaria ends up going toe-to-toe with another Dragon and just quite doesn't have enough health for whatever reason to finish the battle. Charizard can definitely sweep in and take a little bit of that Dragon damage out of the equation. Of course, with Fire Spin and Blast Burn, it's going to be a big powerhouse towards a lot of the pure ice types in the meta. A lot of the steel typings are going to be hurt by that fire type damage, so you do have quite a bit of use case for Charizard in this particular setup. Next, we actually have Blaziken, which, of course, we've talked about Blaziken. Having two moves on Blaziken will be beneficial, not because you're going to use them very often, but because you basically, in most of his matchups, you're not going to use those charge moves. They're basically a bonus, if you will. Blaziken having access to counter. I personally went with Brave Bird and Focus Blast. Having both of those really sets up an interesting situation because you can end up using that flying type damage to help with some of the Altaria situation that, you know, things that Altaria does really good up against. Using its flying type moves, Blaziken can actually help with Brave Bird. And then having access to Focus Blast if they switch into something like Steelix or even Lapras that just really is going to be hurt by that fighting type move, definitely just whip that out and just keep pounding them with counter afterwards. Our last move that we're actually purchasing is actually on Altaria. So I really debated on even including Altaria in either of these teams. But once I got down to like really the nitty gritty, Altaria's biggest investment is 400 candies. It's not the fact that it's big on dust. It is quite an expensive Pokemon, but it's not because of Stardust. If you're holding out for research, for the Jirachi research, thinking that maybe Altaria is going to be an evolution for that specific special research, when are we going to get Jirachi? No one knows. When is your Kingdom Cup? Before the end of the month. I mean, priorities. Definitely set your own priorities, but I'm just saying Altaria is definitely a more plentiful option to have later on, but the Kingdom Cup is going to end by the end of the month. Just my 2 cents there. So Altaria having second move is definitely a good decision in my opinion here. Having access to Dragon Breath, Sky Attack, and Dragon Pulse is huge. Of course, we know it's the best dragon. It's super bulky. It can be hardcore countered by ice type moves, but when it does good, it really does good. So Altaria definitely does get my vote on a second charge move in this team composition here. Now on to our last two picks, which neither of these are going to get a second move only because Lapras is a 75,000 cost for a move that you may not even end up using because, you know, Water Gun and Surf are like the bread and butter to Lapras. I mean, that's really what we're going for. His ice type moves are definitely nice, don't get me wrong, but they're more of a icing on the cake kind of deal. So while they're nice, you don't necessarily need them. If I end up using Lapras, I probably won't buy one just because it's so freaking expensive. I just won't. So as I said, Water Gun and Surf, great idea to have on Lapras there. Being able to spam tons of Surf damage. It really covers all of the fire types. It's so good at covering those fire types. Plus, like I've said time and time again, your Lapras with water type damage really helps cover all of those off type picks like the Pokemon that carry ground, the Pokemon that carry rock, the Pokemon that carry fire. All of those oddball dual typings really end up having a hard time getting over Lapras's crazy water type damage. Last but not least here, we do have Bronzong. So he's kind of an interesting one. He did end up going on both teams, but I think it's only, I think Bronzong is really good in a budget type situation because he only has access to Heavy Slam and Flash Cannon are his two like viable moves. He does have access to what, like Psychic, but honestly, it's not nearly as good as it sounds. I definitely would stick with a Steel type move. And out of Heavy Slam and Flash Cannon, Heavy Slam is definitely preferred. Flash Cannon can be useful to kind of like bait around some shields or to really have that option just to pound it into them. Yes, it is going to be very heavy hitting, but Heavy Slam is definitely quicker and it's definitely more preferred if you're trying to save some dust here. So I definitely think that Bronzong having Confusion and Heavy Slam can be a huge tide turner in a lot of your matchups, having really favorable matchups up against a lot of the fighting types that are in the cup, and honestly having really close matchups with almost everything else. It's really, really good in a lot of different situations. It's just kind of an off meta pick, but it's definitely good. Definitely consider Bronzong. I'm not kidding. So, total dust spent on Dustport. If you had all of these Pokemon caught in the wild, relatively close to 1,500, you'd only spend 30,000 dust on second moves. That's not bad. If you are shooting for like a 50,000 budget or a 100,000 budget like the original plan was for this video, that leaves you 70,000, upwards of 70,000 dust kind of power up into these Pokemon that you don't catch at that level. So definitely pretty good there. Now, is this gonna win every single cup? No. Can this actually do pretty well? I do believe so. Now let's actually move on from Dustport. Let's take our Dustport idea and turn it into Frugal Savings. So a little bit of a hectic spender, if you will, but I definitely tried to keep some long-term investments in mind here so that even though it's Frugal Savings, it's still pretty much a good investment, whether it's just for this month or if it's for the months to come. So for Frugal Savings, I actually start off with Steelix here. So Steelix is a great Pokemon. We've seen how good Steelix can actually be in many, many teams. Having access to all three of his moves being Dragon Tail, Crunch, and Earthquake really can put a big hurting on several Pokemon in this cup. Of course, he is a candidate for not only the ball meta, a lot of people are switching him out with Bastiodon for the Sol meta. Kind of nifty. Yeah, pretty good. Definitely think that Steelix is definitely worth investing in because he's got a lot of merit in future cups, just like he does in every cup he's been in so far. So it's kind of a long-term investment, if you will. Because in the next cup that you're going to use Steelix in, more than likely, you'll have saved 75,000 dust in that cup, if you want to look at it that way. Next on our list is Charizard. This is for the exact same reasons that he was in the Dustport situation back here. Really helpful up against the dragons. Really, really good with his fire type damage. Pretty freaking good, right? Moving on, we actually have Lucario. So if you obviously didn't get my joke earlier, Lucario is the one that I was talking about. I originally did include him in this Dustport savings, but being the fact that he is so hard to obtain, I figured that a lot of people would be looking for a way to not have to use Lucario, because not only is it a dust investment, it is possibly a real-world money investment to get incubators. And even then, it's such a huge time investment. I mean, I spent so long trying to get a Lucario. It's not even funny. So, Lucario, definitely Frugal Savings, but I definitely think that having both charge moves on him is very, very important. Having access to Shadow Ball as well as Power Up Punch can really help do a lot of neutral damage in the cup. If you're feeling frisky, you can use his Steel type move. I don't even know what it is off the top of my head, but you can definitely use it in certain matchups, but Shadow Ball being neutral is kind of the safer option instead of using a Steel type move that's going to be resisted sometimes. So take that for what you will. Moving on, we have Lapras, which is for the exact same reasons as our Dustport situation. Altaria and Bronzong as well in our Dustport situation. All of those Pokemon here at the bottom do really, really, really well. Now, big difference between these two teams, in all honesty, is that we're getting rid of Lucario and putting in a Blaziken there. So Blaziken, of course, does not have Power-Up Punch. He's not nearly as versatile, is the word that I want to use, as Lucario can be because of his Power-Up Punch. Lucario just gaining so much attack boost really can put him in a favorable position up against even Pokemon that do super effective damage to Lucario. He actually ends up having a really easy time in some matchups where he just plain out should not. Blaziken does not have that luxury going into a lot of his matchups, being that he only has access to Counter and Focus Blast are kind of his mainstays, but I definitely think that Blaziken could be considered a budget Lucario, considering they both do a similar role in being the fighting type. So definitely feel like Blaziken is a good replacement for Lucario if you're having issues getting one. Now the other swap to this team here is actually Piloswine going for Steelix. Now Steelix's main role in the Frugal Savings team is of course to have Dragon Tail to help combat some of the dragon and actually end up using Earthquake quite a bit. So that's why I was trying to say with Piloswine that maybe Bulldoze could be more useful for you, but I definitely think that you kind of need to think ahead about what your local cup is going to be using. If you know that there are a ton of hardcore players that you know they're going to be bringing Bastiodon, definitely want to think about Piloswine and maybe using Bulldoze on it. If you know that there's not that many, if there's a lot of casual players that are there to have fun, maybe Stone Edge would do pretty well for you there. It just kind of depends on what you're expecting more of, and if you really are feeling frisky, you can buy that second move, and you're still only at 80,000 here. So not too much, but you are running up close to that 100,000. So you could do that. That of course is an option, but that is completely up to you. So these are my Kingdom Cup teams on a budget. Now, like I said earlier, are these the best teams? No. Are these the top tier teams? No. Are these teams going to win every single match? No. A lot of the time, it's going to come down to your ability to pick a correct lead to force your opponent to switch, and it's going to come down to your shield usage on how well you do. I am a true believer that a Pokemon comes second, whereas the mental skill of a trainer comes first. If you know how to use the Pokemon, you're definitely going to be able to beat someone who doesn't know how to use the Pokemon. So anyways, at this point, I feel like I'm rambling, so I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys are going to do great in your Kingdom Cups coming up. I, of course, love to hear what you guys are experiencing in your Kingdom Cups, whether it's in practice or in actual tournaments. If you guys are at all interested in chatting with me and my little community that we have, please consider joining the Discord. It is down in the description below. It's free to join. I don't care who joins. We're all family. We'll hang out and we'll talk about some Pokemon. Plans after this video. So today, this video going up today should end up being on Wednesday, and when this video actually goes up, hopefully there is a cup announcement right around the corner. I will be making a video as soon as that gets announced. Hopefully by that time I will have both whiteboards set up, kind of a hint as to the new setup that's coming. I really hope to expand upon the idea of the whiteboard and possibly make a sweet little setup that hopefully you guys will enjoy. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like to like videos, make sure you do that. If you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in those comments below. And until our next video, I will catch you then, guys.